Hello, everyone. The original video for this episode has been pushed all the way back to January or February of next year, as I do want the video to be higher quality, and that means editing it on a laptop. And I'm not going to get a laptop until the December of this year. And the reason why I picked December is because, well, prices dropped during the Christmas holiday season. Anyway, on with the video. Media literacy is a disease. For any of you who don't know what media literacy is, it means media examination, where you take a look at a piece of media, such as a film, a book, a video game, a comic, or a TV show, and try to find out what its actual meaning is by looking deeper into its themes and finding out what the actual meaning of said media product is. Now that sounds all fine and dandy, right? But that's what it's supposed to be, because really, media literacy is another way of saying all art is political, and such is what Big Bungie said about those types who say that all art is political. There is no piece of art we can't utilize into propagandizing you into becoming communist. And with that out of the way, let's talk about Fallout. I'm not a Fallout fan. I tried playing Fallout New Vegas, couldn't really get into it, but you don't really need to play the games just to know what the meaning of the Fallout franchise is all about. All you need to do is to watch the beginning cutscenes of most of the games, and it will immediately spell it out to you of what the meaning of Fallout is. War never changes. The game tells you that even after the apocalypse has happened, that even after the bombs have fallen, we're still going to annihilate one another. Now, what have Redditard media literacy types done to Fallout? Well, they turned it into a stupid critique of capitalism. I'm gonna go on a fucking tangent here. Any franchise that claims to be a critique of capitalism is inherently fucking stupid. Why? Because their fan bases act like that it will last for 1,000 years and will be remembered for 1,000 years, only for it to become outdated just in like 2 fucking hours after it's been released. And these critiques of capitalism always fail. Case in point, take a look at Cyberpunk 2077. Its critique of capitalism is bad, especially once you take into account of the fact that the tabletop game actually critiqued corporatism, and despite what dumbasses and normies like to think, corporatism and capitalism are actually quite different from one another. And then there's something like BioShock, which even its take on like fucking objectivism is also bad, especially when you know a thing or two about objectivism. Now, thankfully, people pushed back against this narrative, unlike other franchises, and that is The Lord of the Rings. Many of these media literacy types love to claim that both Sam and Frodo were gay for one another, which it completely goes against J.R.R. Tolkien's Catholicism. and they all try to argue that J.R.R. Tolkien was somehow a gay man, despite the fact that there's no evidence of such. Now, this type of thing isn't exactly new in current year, but in the context of the cultural rot that we've been experiencing for the last 100 years since the Weimar Republic, this is a pretty recent thing. And that is with the whole idea of that any character that was made by some right winger is somehow a closeted homosexual because the right winger who made that character was a closeted homosexual himself. Now, personally, if you ask me, I think this is due to the fact that leftists, not just media literacy types, but leftists in general, can't handle the idea of a right winger not being a hypocrite, because all the media that they've been exposed to whenever they discuss right wingers is that they usually depict them as being uber anti-homosexual, but then behind the scenes that they're in some closeted relationship with another man. So they grew up with that mindset, and then they see something like The Lord of the Rings, which has a very right-wing stance on things, because I mean by J.R.R. Tolkien was a monarchist and was a very devout Catholic. They just can't handle that idea alone. That they can't handle the idea of a Catholic or any kind of right winger not being some closeted homosexual because they grew up with that stereotype in mind. Now, yes, most stereotypes are based on elements of reality, but when you start to automatically assume it to almost every single individual of that said group, it makes people like myself question if that said stereotype is really based in reality. And the second reason is subversion. And do I really need to explain why that is? Because this whole video is attacking media literacy for subverting media. So I don't really need to explain the second reason and why they claim that Sam and Frodo were gay. And back to the first point, like, even these people in general can't handle the thought of a straight man being, well, straight. They can't handle the idea of him not being a closeted homosexual. That they can't handle the idea of how he describes some of the women in his stories in a very raunchy way, and in some cases in a borderline corn way. No. They can't handle that. They must be secretly gay in some form. Like the like I mean by even this isn't even restricted to the right in how they think this way, because they were raised to think that sexuality is some form of spectrum, even though it ain't. It really ain't. They've been taught to think that for some odd reason, sexual kinks and fetishes are somehow on the same level as something like heterosexuality. And another reason why they think that way is to also destroy brotherhood, but do I really need to explain why that is? Just simply take a look at our media nowadays, and you can simply see it right in front of your eyes. And what also makes it insulting is that you know that the friendship between Frodo and Sam are clearly based on the friendship seen in the trenches of World War One. Like, I mean by... just imagine that. And I'm going to bring up an example. Just imagine you are being comforted by a man after you witnessed one of your friends get his legs blown off by artillery, and another one of your friends cough up blood and pieces of his lungs during a chlorine gas attack, only to find out that the man who's comforting you isn't doing it out of fucking simple moral principle, but is instead doing it because he's a fucking deviant, and then 100 years later, people glorify him. It's exactly on that level. Tyler Durden from Fight Club. Almost every single one of these media literacy types seemingly have a hate boner for this character. Even though, if you watch the film, he's correct. Like, he never annihilates anyone, with that word that I can't say on YouTube and it starts with a K. And he's not a hypocrite, and he's all around generally correct in the story of, well, Fight Club. But every single time you sympathize with him, These media literacy types are like, oh no, you got it wrong. You're not supposed to glorify him. And there's a reason why that is. You don't even need to look further than the very media literacy types that I'm critiquing right now. They are peak Redditor. They participate in consumerism, like all they do is consume, consume, and consume without questioning why they're consuming. And they're very pro-materialism. Tyler Durden, on the other hand, is very anti-consumer and very anti-materialist, and he represents everything that they don't like, which is very, well, anti-consumer and anti-materialist. And that's why they hate him. Now, there's usually a sense of hypocrisy when it comes to this media literacy. Case in point, you're not allowed to sympathize with characters such as Tyler Durden from Fight Club or Rorschach from The Watchmen, despite the fact that they are completely correct in what they're doing, despite their flaws in their stories. And that's because the media literacy type acts like he has a sense of superiority over you because he's, quote, smarter about his media, but really, he ain't. He's just proving of how much of a brain-dead communist he is. In fact, you're not even allowed to question on why most of our villains are not diverse in the same way as our heroes are, as they will try to portray you as, well, I think I'll do it in a much more funny and comedic way. Oh my god! This is heckin' unhinged! Oh my god, my fellow soygoys! Report this chud now! You know, that type of thing, where you can't really talk about it without the fear of getting reported into oblivion by those said Redditors. And that's all I have to say. You have a good day or night, depending on where you live. Oh, and I've heard about Charlie Kirk and how a bunch of leftists are sadistically having a joy over his death, and I'm just gonna say it. You never, ever debate with evil. Because why should you speak with the very thing that wants you gone from this world? Charlie Kirk did that, now he's gone. Never, ever debate with evil.